up your sheet too, so I'm at least prepared for those. I feel like it'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Teresa Hamann for her flexibility in recording this session to share with our fellows. I know we've had a lot of questions about the City of Davenport AmeriCorps program as people have learned a little bit about it, especially your work with youth AmeriCorps members. So happy to have you give a little overview of the program that we can share, and then we'll offer people time to submit some questions to me if they have those for follow-up. So I'll turn it over to you, Teresa.
Wonderful. We are the City of Davenport AmeriCorps Youth Corps program, and like you make the distinction a lot of times is it's a Youth AmeriCorps program opposed to Youth Corps. We pretty much started as a small state formula program, and that was the only component of the original grant was having Youth AmeriCorps. Davenport had the dubious honor of being the lowest graduation rate in the state, and the city and obviously the school district were both very concerned about that, especially being that we're a quad city and people have the right to live where they want. So we wanted to make a concerted effort in a multitude of ways, but most directly affecting the dropout rate. So we set up a program for kids that are higher at risk. They have more than 2 risk factors to not graduating. So it's not your typical program that you would have somebody deciding to do service. It's not your National Honor students. It's actually kids on the cusp of deciding to drop out. And we originally started with 10 of those, but we were making an effort to have, I think, 20 to 40 kids that met those risk factors that would serve 300 hours over the summer in something that they're interested in doing. So we had originally like people working with fire, people working with the police, people working with special events. A lot of those youth corps thought they wanted to be quote unquote businessmen, but when we put them in a business setting, they really didn't like that. And that was actually the most exciting thing about our youth corps program, and it's still probably the central focus that we all really, really are passionate about, is that the kids learn a lot about their community. They do a lot of community engagement as well, helping out with the large community events that many of them hadn't even known that they could go to with their families, that are free and accessible, as well as them learning that if they want to work with kids, they have to graduate, and that some of them learn that they don't want to work with kids, or don't want to be in the business world, that they really like working with their hands or, building stuff. One of the early success stories with our youth corps was we had RAGBRAI going through town and BIX, and because of a flood, we had to move the ending point. And we had a beautification crew of 4 youth AmeriCorps and a leader that also kind of worked as a mentor with them. And they poured a pad down by Credit Island. And these kids were so proud of what they had done. They brought their families for that ending, like the dip site, and they were like telling everybody that finished RAGBRAI, which is quite a few people, like 20,000, that they poured that, and that's that they did that, and it's stuff like that you can see, like the pride that they have and the ownership in their community that a lot of time had been disengaged. So that's one of the biggest things that we've found with the youth AmeriCorps, that it not only does this build a mentor-mentee relationship, and we really push that. We actually do a training with those that are going to be working with the youth AmeriCorps, and the youth corps themselves, we do a lot of soft skill training, a lot of resource development. That was, I know, one of the things that if a city or an organization was looking to do work with high at risk, 17 and 18-year-olds, you do need to do a lot of soft skill, like what's appropriate behavior, but then you also have to even walk them through how are they going to get there. And if plan A doesn't work, their car breaks down, their friend's car breaks down, their friend doesn't wake up, that they're still responsible for getting there. What is going to be their next step? Same thing with food. A lot of them also suffer from food insecurities. So we've kind of taken it on ourselves to let them know about food banks that are there. Do we, work with the sites to say if there is a free school lunch program, is there a way for them to have that be their break time? Also, we've kind of linked them up with people that do boxes for the weekends in the summer, working with even our title schools, and so having them have access to that. But that is definitely a factor. A lot of these kids have a lot of struggles and obstacles, and so it's trying to get them, one, to have a different view of thinking. They usually think of the immediate for obvious reasons, but if we want to make them make that jump to success, a lot of times we have to say, in order for you to get the 300 hours, you got to be thinking of this. In order for you to not get behind if something like that comes up, or a situation that you can't control, you want to get ahead of the game. And a lot of them do make that change in thinking. When they successfully complete the program, and again, some of them don't complete, but it's usually beyond their control. They've either lost their family situation or had to be moved, or but if they complete, we have a 100% success rate of them graduating, which is really great, and we're really proud of. The rest of our program has kind of morphed, because of those things, into earlier prevention and supporting through our grant efforts to help kids increase their odds of being successful. And with that, we take elementary age, we work with our stepping stones and big brothers, big sisters, so that they have caring adults in their lives. They know the importance of going to school. That's a big thing. That's like actually one of the hugest factors. And again, it brings up all sorts of other obstacles that we're hopefully getting them to plan those earlier on, and understanding that fundamentally going to school makes them have a higher success of completing school. That seems pretty logical, but sometimes the simplicity of it is lost on even parents, not necessarily that have socioeconomic issues. Sometimes it's that they just don't hold it as important that they start going to kindergarten, that that they are going on vacation, and that's just as good of a thing. But really educating parents too about the fact that they're there and they hold that as a priority going to school is an important thing. So most of our other sites are directly related to supporting that.
Great. Well, thanks for that overview. And it's always good for me to talk to a program, because then I learn some more things too, like about some of those extra supports you're giving to like the food security issue for the members. So but you talked a little bit about, how you'd have to do some of that extra work to support your youth AmeriCorps members. I wondered if you could talk a little bit also about how do you identify those members and, actually recruit them into the program, knowing that there's youth who were disengaged in other ways. How do you get them engaged in deciding to do the AmeriCorps program?
I would say we are really lucky, and if anybody was, again, trying to duplicate some of these efforts, it really would be trying to build partnerships that are strong. We have a very strong partnership with the school district, and which is obviously crucial to identifying those kids. First of all, that they have access to that information that we don't necessarily have. On top of that, they give us access to those classrooms and kids and the counselors, and we've done many education and outreach efforts with them, and need to be continuously done just because of the transient nature of population that we're talking about, as well as changes in the school district and and positions and stuff like that. But we're continuously and almost cyclically, if that's a word, educating people about Youth AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps, as well as trying to put them in positions of being high profile and actually talking to different organizations that work with youth and the schools, so that they know of this opportunity, that the parents know of this opportunity through like our partners, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the Y, that are already working with these populations a lot of times. And so that we talk about just the importance of serving and this component of our program, and try to really push that early on. And I would also say we're lucky enough, like, because they are part of the larger community events, that kind of helps keep AmeriCorps and our name in the forefront. It's almost the service itself is almost its own marketing effort, if that makes sense, especially with our city officials who are at these events, leaders in the community, which also have farther reach maybe for not necessarily just even support, but like to continuously push out that AmeriCorps are helping us. And the conversation starts to come up where the Humane Society had been at one of the events, and then they see these AmeriCorps, and the youth are wanting to work with the animals, and they like that component, and they're like, well, how do you become a site? And then all of a sudden we have a site now that they are able to serve if they're interested in working with animals. And like last year, we had a couple people in that situation. There's been other youth programs that a lot of times will, like, how do we get an AmeriCorps? They're such good helpers. Then at the parks, our operations, which a lot of them do like aspire to work in streets or construction or any of those other things. And when they get to do stuff in their community that they can proudly display, and we can market that this was done by an AmeriCorps effort, or again, it's like the marketing and the outreach kind of go hand in hand, as well as the pride of the members. So I would say all of those efforts. But again, it starts with the partnering with the lead organizations, and especially the district, because they have the access to the kids.
Great, thanks. And just to note, like, I know that for part-time members, technically the living allowance is optional, but you do pay the living allowance to your members. And then I guess a question I didn't prep you for, but in terms of utilizing the education award, do you know how well the Youth AmeriCorps members have done with that, or what sort of help do you provide them to understand how that works and what it can be used for?
That's a really good question. And honestly, one of the we're lucky enough, another partner of ours is Iowa State Extension, which are very good at the data part of it and the logistics. And early on kind of understood that the target audience for our Youth AmeriCorps program would not probably have any idea how to access the education award part of it. And honestly, we found early on the lack of understanding that they don't get like a check at the end. they actually have to be utilizing it. We also have had very good. One of our administrative assistants was given that as a goal, is developing an array of uses for that education award, and not just post-secondary education, because some of them, that is not what they're going to aspire to, but that you could use it for trade schools, you could use it for beauty school, you could use it for the community colleges, and we're working with them to also up the impact, like if they do a match award, or this service can count as a credit, stuff like that, that kind of gets them thinking about actual usage. I would say that we're better than 50%, which is pretty amazing when you, again, think about our target audience and the fact that graduation is a struggle, let alone I don't think of any of them that have had parents that have had post-secondary education. So a lot of times it is really walking them through how you even apply, because it is daunting. It's daunting for me. It was daunting for me and my kids, and they have plenty of support. And so a lot of times, again, these are kids that are dependent on their parents for some information, because a lot of them have already been in the system, so to speak. We found that when we used to use your timekeeping system, it was like a week-long struggle for some of them, because they don't know that they have accounts in their name, and but the system only lets them have one. So we would have to figure out how they had that and basically undo the process to restart the process. And then there was a lot of fear too with that, because their parents, may be counting on money that they get for them. And again, that was an education that we're not trying to take away anything you already have, but we're actually trying to expand the opportunities as well as have you be in the program. So that was difficult. That is a continuous goal of mine. I don't know how many people I've ran into the community, and they are like, Teresa, and they're working, and they're like, oh my God, don't I still have that education award? And I'm like, I know you, but I don't know you. Like, when did you serve? Was it within the 7 years? Yes, we can get, call us up. And because Cassidy, again, our administrative assistant, does do a good job in trying to follow up, as well as us trying to capture those stories so that we can, use them as hooks when we go and do our recruitment. And there has been quite a bit. From some of our earlier youth corps have gone through and have graduated college and are coming back and actually working in nonprofit. And a lot of it is, I think, because of the impact of doing service. So we're really, really proud of those things. And again, a lot of our partners and our sites, we ask them how we can help them help their members make sure that they do utilize that education award, make sure that they do get their applications into even the community college. And we've gone and done education things with those leaders as well. And they in turn have helped us to push that service opportunity out, especially when it's directly related. If it's people looking to do an education or in the medical field, both high priorities in our area. How can this AmeriCorps service, how would it fit into their life plan? And we've also done that with our local St. Ambrose University, with the social work degree and the psychology degree. Is there ways that they can do a service term that also helps them get education experience that they already were needing, that also would help us to give them yet another benefit of being an AmeriCorps.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that's a growing priority kind of at the federal level, and something that we're trying to get a handle on where programs are at with doing that and more enhanced professional development. So
yeah. And that, I think that really works. Every once in a while, it's the actual action or inaction from the members that remind us that they are young, that they are, passionate about what they're doing. And the times, I mean, the last couple of years, I always have been a struggle too. And I don't know if it's necessarily, we're not lying, but the service looked different necessarily than what we had originally sold,
Yeah.
and it's out our control. But a lot of times the members who have just been, oh, I really want to do that, and then that's not what it looks like. That was something that we've been struggling with for the last year, and having to like undo and reaffirm that we do have these opportunities, and regrow them. Relationship building is always, I would say, the fundamental of AmeriCorps, especially our program, where a lot of times they don't have necessarily relationships with caring adults that are not either in a punitive manner or their guardian. And with that, though, comes a lot of trust testing to be built up, and it has been a difficult environment for that the last couple of years, and we're hoping things are, I don't know, back. I don't know if there's a new normal, but back to a situation where we can control a little bit more, and make sure that we do give them those professional development opportunities, because that is a big help of this, as well as, like I said, the relationships that they build with the organizations that will probably hire them. Many of our youth AmeriCorps, another success part of that is that many of them go on to work for the organization that they serve with in the summer, because they then can see these other members that are augmenting the program, and they're like, well, I want to do what the other one is doing, and we're like, well, that's an employee, but if you do complete your service, maybe they'll hire you as an employee.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's worked out great. I feel like then again, they're actually then our advocate for future AmeriCorps to be able to have that same duplicate service. And the sites are much more excited because they know they've gotten some good employees out of it as well.
Right. Yep. Well, one last question I had, you've alluded a little bit to some of the different staffing roles, but I wondered if you could share kind of what does the staffing structure look like now? Obviously, knowing you have a pretty big program, but and I guess any thoughts about someone getting started? What are some key roles you think are needed to support youth AmeriCorps members in particular?
If I was starting, well, I would say the technical assistance has gotten a, I don't know if the word is better, but as everyone's kind of gone along, I feel like they're in the technical world has advanced. The struggles that were early on for us aren't struggles necessarily with things like DocuSign, things like the timesheets being universal and all digital. A lot of those things are better because you can template stuff, because honestly that's a daunting task to a new program, especially one like ours that I have two other jobs that would be considered full-time jobs on top of this, and that can sometimes be daunting. You're like, oh my god, I have to create this and look for this. And the way we had set it up, it was set up for failure a little bit, in the fact that we didn't have anybody dedicated to it. We've been lucky enough that we've grown, and now we have that, and that consistency is really important. That you have somebody always like cheerleading for it, and making sure you're compliant. Now I have enough experience that I can do a lot of that stuff just quickly. But to get to that point, you really do need somebody else that it gives you that confidence, that you're doing okay. Because like any federal program and stuff like that, that much like the application process for college for a kid, it's a little daunting, and they probably purposely so that they don't just have any person or organization just attempting it on a whim. It is daunting, so that you are serious and you have the ability and the capacity to take it on. I think that's why a lot of times now they have the capacity growing grants to make sure you really do have that capacity to remain compliant. That said, because of so many organizations going through those things, I think that there's been a lot of stuff developed to really systematically walk you through the process. And I think that's better than it used to be. And there's a lot of organizations now that have been around. I know there's a couple people that started when I started, and now they're all real sound, larger organizations as well. And with that, we do like to take part in helping others get to that point quicker and easier, and the support is helpful. And there's a lot of other programs starting to look like ours or look like other people's, if they have an idea, if they want to do an environmental program, or if they want to do something in education or something like that. Now there are ones that you can say, oh, this organization may help you, or can share their documentation, stuff like that, because that's very time-consuming stuff that really needlessly is time-consuming. It doesn't really have to be. You can duplicate those efforts, and people like that. I mean, if anything, that's helpful for us when it comes to performance measures and evaluation, which are also very daunting. The more we have similar like programs, the more we have probably an opportunity to do larger scale evaluations that we kind of work together with.
Yes, well, and we appreciate the willingness of you experienced AmeriCorps folks to do things like this, share information, and follow up individually with folks. So,
yeah.
Is there anything else I did not ask you about that you really wanted to share about your program?
I would just say, if I was to do it over, that capacity is a bigger thing. We've learned, much like any volunteer situation, the more you develop on the front end, the more you develop exactly what they're going to be doing, and the sites, like the logistical parts of that, really is a better experience for the member. And there's not a misunderstanding. For sure they're going to have enough to do. I'm getting better at eliminating sites or the opportunity. Like a lot of people, oh, we want a member, just like we want an intern, or we want a volunteer, or we need volunteers. I'm getting better at saying how many exactly volunteers do you need and what are they doing, and will that take them? How long will that take them? So those definitions really are important, and you can usually be empathetic in those situations. You can be like, if I show up to a cleaning and there's 40 people there, but there's only 20 garbage bags, and you don't get a garbage bag, you're not really going to feel like you need to even stay there, right? And it's kind of like that. If you are like an intern and you show up and they're just like, oh, like they aren't ready for you. You don't know what you're going to be doing that day, let alone the month, let alone, your whole thing of service. You don't feel needed. And especially with community service or service in any type, I think that's like fundamental, that the need is there so that you know that you're going to be impactful. And honestly, I think it's funny because I think people think that there's less of a need for the youth AmeriCorps in that regard because they're young maybe, or because, some of them may not have as many opportunities, so they'll for sure want to do it or whatever that may be. The need is actually more because they haven't had that experience very much. They haven't felt needed. And a lot of times that makes the whole difference when they know that they're actually doing something. And I would say this to any age, AmeriCorps from 9 to 99, or any service from 9 to 99. If you're needed, that is the fundamental of service in general, if you're making some kind of impact. And so to make sure you're better, and I say this even with staff too, you're better to have less and them all have a purpose than to have a really large program or a large recruitment, and then them not have great service or not feel really needed, they're never going to talk about it positively. Whereas, if you had 5 members and they all had great service, that's 5 huge advocates that are always talking positive about it. Not to mention the sites got better because they really needed those people, and they made sure that they told them that, and that they had more stuff for them, and that kind of stuff. It's like I said, it's cyclical, so that's helpful to not grow too fast, to make sure that your sites are your partners. I still have struggle sometimes with that. Sometimes we become so member focused at the administrative level that we forget it's really their service is 90% through the site. So it's more important to develop the site as doing everything well than just directly the member. One, it's confusing. It's like divorced parents or something like that, right? They can play that to their advantage, which is really to their disadvantage if they do that. Whereas if you feel like your team is your site supervisors and they feel empowered and they are being held accountable, they're going to make sure that their service is well defined and a positive experience for those members, which is, like I said, crucial for the success.
That was great advice, of course. So thanks for taking the time to share, and we'll be very glad to pass this information along to the fellows.
Great. Thank you. Anything else?